Now in this question we're going to be looking at factorizing a quadratic expression. Now a quadratic expression will look something like this. It'll have an x squared and an x and a number. So it'll have a value squared, the regular value of that variable, and then a number. So it's got three terms. Now in order to factorize, we're asked to completely factorize the following expression. There's a number of different ways of doing this, but my favorite one is to split it into four terms and then use the grouping that you've already learnt in order to do this. So for this particular question we need a particular trick, and that trick is how do we break up negative 8x into two terms in a particular way that will help us to finish the rest of the question. So what we have is we look at the number plus 7, and then we take negative 8 and we split it into the two numbers negative 1 and negative 7. And the reason we did that is because negative 1 and negative 7 add together to give negative 8, and they also multiply to give us positive 7. So our particular trick is to break it up into four terms. We took the middle term, we broke that into two new terms, which added together to give you our original my negative 8 here. So minus 1x minus 7x, that's obviously the same as negative x, so there's no big change. But the reason we did this was so that we had it into four terms, and because we've done lots of practicing on how to break up four terms and how to factorize four terms, we know what our next steps are. So our next steps are we take x squared minus 1x, we factorize that to get x times x minus 1. We take the negative 7x plus 7, and we factorize that to get negative 7 times x minus 1. Okay, so let's have a look at the negative 7x plus 7 here. And what we can see is negative 7x plus 7. We could have taken a plus 7 out of both of these, because plus 7 will go into both of these. But I took out a minus 7, and the reason I did that was because I wanted to get the same x here as I had here. So on our first step, I took out the negative 7 from the negative 7x to ensure that the value x here was the same as the value x I got here before. And the reason I did that was because we want to end up with a common term, same as we always have when we're breaking up four terms and we're factorizing them up. So x squared just means x times x, and my x squared minus 1x gets factorized into x times x minus 1. Negative 7x plus 7, I took out the factor negative 7. So negative 7x divided into negative 7 here goes x times. Plus 7 divided by minus 7 is minus 1. You know that because you've done 1,000 questions on integers in order to work that out. And now we have a common factor, x minus 1. And as we can see, that goes in x minus 7 times. Now I'm going through this quite fast, but you've done the practice on the previous questions, so this should be reasonably okay for you. It takes a lot of practice to get the hang of the negative numbers, but what we need to make absolutely sure is that this x minus 1 here is the same as this x minus 1 here, so that we have a common term. And in order to do that, I took out the minus 7 here. I took out minus 7 to make sure that we had a positive x here, the same as we had here. And thankfully, we ended up with a negative 1 here. The reason we ended up with the same common term was that we were careful to pick this here. We carefully broke this up into two terms so that minus 8 was still the same here. Minus 1 minus 7x gives us minus 8x, but we chose the numbers carefully, minus 1 and minus 7, because minus 1 times minus 7 will give us plus 7. And because we chose those numbers, because of that trick, the rest of the equation just works out fine.